Hi everybody, I hope you can see that I've posted a how to quote versus how to paraphrase announcement, and of course if you found this recording it's in the end of that. What I wanted to do was walk you through an example of what this little handout is explaining to you. So I'm going to go over the handout briefly and then I'm going to show you an example of how it works, how to bookend a source with documentation. And it shows you how to quote or how to paraphrase a source. So as the little typed handout describes, quoting and paraphrasing is what you do in the body of your essay, with the exception of maybe if you have a cool quote as a hook, in your introduction. Mostly when you're trying to prove a point in the compare and contrast, for example, you're going to use data details from a source that you're borrowing the information. It's theirs, it's not yours, and so you have to accurately share that information with your audiences, but show and differentiate what your wording is versus what their wording is and where those differences are. So to do that, you have to first decide whether you're going to quote or paraphrase. And so the determinations, it depends. Now, quoting is really straight and to the point. The words are exactly the author's words. You don't change anything. And you want to quote when the idea is complex and you don't want to misconstrue it for your readers. Say it's something that Einstein was saying directly to an audience and you don't want to confuse it because it's a technical topic. Also, say you're quoting a piece of literature, something for the humanities, a poem, Shakespeare's sonnets, for example. You don't want to mess up the phraseology. You don't want to take the tone out of it by paraphrasing it. You want it to be exactly as Shakespeare had said. So those are good reasons to quote. But paraphrasing actually is a little bit more sophisticated a strategy, and what it does, it shows mastery of concept. So what you're doing when you paraphrase is that you're making it more easily understood for another audience. Say you're writing to a group of 10th graders, you're going back to college to become a high school science teacher, and you're trying to explain Einstein's concepts to a group of high schoolers. You may not use the same terminology he used with other physicists, right? So that's to make the idea more easily understood. The second one is to condense it. Say he had an hour-long speech and you want to get to the kernel of what he was trying to say. You have less than a paragraph to do that. So you paraphrase to condense. Most importantly, you paraphrase to show mastery of concept in academic writing. That's why we want you to use outside sources in this compare-contrast assignment. It's not always about what you know, but it's about how you can explain that to us, certainly, but how you can incorporate ideas from the class lectures into compare-contrast, how you can sort of flip back and forth and show you understand tone and the understand audience and first-person point of view. So doing an assignment like this and paraphrasing some content from like the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that you understand what they're saying without having to quote it, that you can just explain it even to a general audience of your peers. 4, to make flow with your style of writing is important. Say the writer is English as a second or foreign language speaker, and they're absolutely brilliant, but their phraseology is a little bit different, and it would read kind of stilted if you had your topic sentence and then their content, and then your unpacking. It would just read, it would be real choppy, even if their grammar was perfect, just because English language has a lot of variety. And it would flow differently than yours. And so oftentimes people paraphrase to make flow with their own style of writing. So the process of one or the other is when you quote, you copy that text word for word. You don't change anything. And for this paper, there are ways to sort of tweak and play with quotes, but I don't want you to do that in this compare contrast. I'll explain that for the cause effect. But for now, just copy it word for word. But the really important element of that is you must put quotes at the beginning and at the end of that to indicate where your words begin and end and where their words begin and end. If you miss that, what happens is you've got plagiarism, even if it was unintentional. Okay? Next, cite your source. And there are 2 ways to do this. Either is fine. Number 1, according to Jane Smith. That's called a signal phrase. And that lets us know who's speaking. And you do that at the beginning of where you're borrowing a source. Okay? According to Jane Smith, college students are often not prepared to make an early decision regarding their major as freshmen. Okay? And then the second option is the next quote. 45% of college students change majors at least twice in the first 2 semesters. Smith, 2015. Okay? So both of those examples show APA style because we have the name of the source and the copyright year. Copyright year could come after the name in the first instance, but in the second one, because it's an in-text citation, it looks just like this, Smith, comma, 2015. This is also what we call bookending. So say you use Smith in 4 or 5 different sentences. You start off with, according to Jane Smith, and then your next part could be, Smith also says that, she acknowledges, and so on and so forth. So every time you're borrowing a bit of text from Smith, you don't have to keep saying Smith 2015 in every sentence. That gets redundant. But you're signaling back to Smith each time to show it's paraphrased from her, okay? Or it's quoted from her. So even if you have a quote, you still have to name your source. So we don't think it's just thoughts in your head, okay? So that's what that process looks like. Now, the process of paraphrasing is somewhat similar in that you're always naming your sources, but that you want to play around a little bit with the way that you do it based on the reasons earlier in this recording. So you'll see a link in this little video, and the link is also embedded in the announcement. It's from the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Writing Center. Remember, annotate the original text. Take copious notes within the margins of it. So when you print out a source, even if it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or if it's Forbes or Newsweek, you print it out and you make notes just to allow the content to sort of sink into your long-term memory storage bank. So you're starting to sort of understand what they're saying. Write questions in the margins, highlight important concepts, just really engage with it. And then you walk away from it. Don't immediately look at the original and start writing. It's going to bleed into your text, and you're going to plagiarize. Some of you may. Unintentionally, because you're looking at the original and you're doing what's called patchwork plagiarizing, where you're not making it sound like you. You have to not look at it to write it in your own words. That's the way to protect yourself. Okay, so when you come back to it, give it 20-30 minutes. Make sure you're not looking at that original. Write your thoughts down as you understand it, and then put the two next to each other, the original with your notes and then your thoughts side by side, and do what we call a comparison edit. This makes sure that you've clearly put it in your own words, you're not confusing any sources, and that everything, I understand what you have said, and I understand what Jane Smith has said, okay? So you still must document the source with an in-text citation, as in steps 1 and 2 of the quote above. So you could say the first time you introduce Smith, Jane Smith makes note of the concerns of college counselors as they advise students who have changed their major more than once in the first academic year. So that may not be how she said it. You're condensing a lot of it. That's why you've chosen a paraphrase. Second example, reports show that almost half, 45% of students from community colleges to research one universities change majors, Smith 2015. So that data is still from Smith, and I've acknowledged where that data came from. It's not common knowledge, so I have to acknowledge it. Okay, so I just wanted to do a little recording, kind of walk you through quoting and paraphrasing. If you have questions about this, reach out to me. I will be working from home Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, so I will be able to help you with that, and I'm here for whatever you need. Good luck.